She forgot her purse at the restaurant and went back to get it. The manager whispered, "I'll show you the security footage, but don't faint when you see it." What her husband did on camera made her legs go weak. And the truth that followed changed everything. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family channel. Heavenly God, today we place every woman of this family into your loving hands. Cover her with strength when she is tired, peace when her heart is heavy, and honor for all the silent sacrifices she makes every day. Bless her health, protect her mind, and reward her patience. She carries families, heals homes, and holds love together without ever asking for recognition. Let no woman here feel forgotten, weak, or alone. Lift her, restore her, and crown her with dignity and endless grace. My beautiful family, these stories are written with respect, tears, and love, especially for the women who listen, feel deeply, and stay with me. Your presence matters, your support matters, your love keeps this family breathing. If your heart is true, like the video, if your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter. Stay with me. This is your home." Natalie Wood had forgotten her purse at the restaurant, where her husband just received a standing ovation, and returning for it would cost her everything she believed about love. The valet had already brought her Mercedes around when she realized the designer bag wasn't in the passenger seat. Gregory was still inside, celebrating his promotion to Chief Financial Officer with his colleagues from Premier Healthcare Solutions. Natalie had excused herself early, claiming a headache, though the truth was simpler. She couldn't bear another hour of watching her husband charm strangers while barely acknowledging her presence. She walked back through the marble entrance of Bellanotte, the upscale Italian restaurant where they'd just spent 3 hours at a promotion dinner that felt more like a funeral for their marriage. The main dining room was emptying, servers clearing tables. Her table was being reset for the next reservation. "Mrs. Peck." The voice stopped her mid-stride. Miguel Santos, the restaurant manager, stood near the host stand. His expression made Natalie's stomach tighten. Not the polite smile of someone who'd found a lost item. Something darker, something that looked like pity. "I have your purse in my office," he said quietly, gesturing toward the back hallway. "But before I return it, there's something you need to see." Natalie followed him through the kitchen, past the line cooks breaking down their stations, into a small office cluttered with schedules and invoices. Miguel closed the door. "Mrs. Peck, I debated showing you this." Miguel's hands trembled as he pulled up security footage on his computer. "My wife left me for another man 6 years ago. Someone showed me proof when I was too blind to see it. I hated them for it. But looking back, it was the greatest mercy anyone ever showed me." He turned the monitor toward her. Black and white footage. Timestamp. Tonight, 45 minutes ago. Camera angle. Their table. Natalie watched herself stand, gather her coat, lean down to kiss Gregory's cheek. Watched him barely turn his head, eyes already scanning the room. Watched herself walk away, shoulders straight, smile fixed, playing the supportive wife one more time. Then everything changed. The moment Natalie disappeared from frame, a woman slid into her empty chair. Jane Mitchell, Gregory's executive assistant, the woman he'd mentioned casually over the past 8 months, always professionally, always with that easy dismissiveness that made Natalie feel foolish for occasional jealousy. There was nothing professional about what Natalie was watching now. Jane's hand on Gregory's thigh, his arm around her waist, her lips against his neck, his fingers threading through her hair. The intimacy was practiced, comfortable, established. This wasn't new. "I'm sorry," Miguel said softly, "but there's more." He fast-forwarded. New footage. 6 weeks ago, same table. Jane was crying. Gregory held both her hands across the table, that expression of tender concern Natalie remembered from their early years. Jane lifted her shirt slightly, just enough, placed Gregory's hand on her stomach. The change in Gregory's face destroyed something fundamental in Natalie's chest, pure joy, unfiltered, radiant, bigger than their wedding day. His mouth formed words Natalie could read even without sound. "We're having a baby." They embraced, both crying. Happy tears, the kind Natalie had cried alone in hospital rooms while Gregory attended conferences and client meetings. Miguel's voice barely registered. "Mrs. Peck, I need you to sit down." More footage. 3 weeks ago, Gregory and Jane with a real estate agent walking through a 4-bedroom house, Jane pointing at rooms, laughing. Gregory signing papers, pulling her close, the gesture of a man planning a future. 1 week ago, Gregory and Jane with a lawyer. Miguel zoomed in on documents spread across the table. The header was clear. Divorce petition Peck v. Peck. Natalie's hands gripped the armrests. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. They'd just renewed their vows last month. Not officially. Gregory had suggested they plan a proper ceremony. Something to celebrate us, he'd said. She'd been planning it, booking venues, choosing flowers, rebuilding hope. "One more," Miguel whispered. "From 2 nights ago." Gregory and Jane at their table. Champagne, celebration. Gregory raising his glass, speaking directly to camera. Miguel had enhanced the audio, static-filled but clear enough. Gregory's voice. "To finally being free of 15 years of guilt, to the life we deserve, to leaving behind the woman who trapped me when I was vulnerable." Jane's laughter. "Did you see her face at your promotion party? So proud of herself for creating you. She actually thinks you love her." Gregory's response shattered the last intact piece of Natalie's heart. "She was useful. Paid my debts, funded my MBA, played the devoted wife while I built something real. Now she's just in the way." The footage ended. Miguel's office felt airless. "Your husband paid me $500 last month," Miguel said, pulling an envelope from his desk. "He asked me to delete all footage of him and Ms. Mitchell. I kept copies. I lost my wife to a man like your husband, Mrs. Peck. I couldn't let another woman walk blind into this." Natalie stared at the dark monitor. Her reflection stared back, a woman she no longer recognized. "How long?" Her voice sounded hollow. 8 months. They have a regular Thursday reservation, under the name Mr. and Mrs. Peck. Thursday nights. The nights Gregory claimed he had late meetings with the executive team. The nights Natalie made dinner and ate alone and told herself this was temporary, that success required sacrifice, that their marriage would settle once he achieved his goals. He'd achieved them tonight. Chief financial officer, corner office, 7-figure salary. Everything she'd worked 70-hour weeks to help him build, everything she'd sacrificed her own career to support, and he'd been planning his exit the entire time. Natalie stood. "Thank you for showing me." Miguel handed her the purse. "I can give you copies of the footage for your attorney." "Yes." The word came automatically. Attorney. Divorce. The future she'd spent 15 years believing would never be hers. She walked to her car in a daze, sat in the driver's seat, stared at the restaurant entrance. Gregory emerged 20 minutes later, alone. Jane must have left through another exit. He was checking his phone, smiling at something. Probably a text from her. Probably planning their next Thursday. He didn't see Natalie's car in the shadows. Didn't see his wife watching him walk to his BMW. Didn't see her hands gripping the steering wheel so hard her knuckles went white. Natalie drove home on autopilot. The house was dark. She walked through rooms that suddenly felt like a museum of her own foolishness. Photos on the mantel documenting their love story, her story, the one she'd written alone. She made tea, sat at the kitchen table, opened her laptop. By sunrise, she'd watched the security footage Miguel had emailed 17 times. By sunrise, she'd stopped crying. By sunrise, something colder than grief had settled in her chest. Something that felt like clarity. Gregory came home at 7 in the morning. She heard his key in the lock. Found her in the kitchen, still sitting at the table, laptop closed, tea cold. "Baby," he smiled, the mask he'd perfected over 8 months of Thursdays. "You left your purse. I was worried." Miguel called. "I picked it up this morning." "Good." He kissed the top of her head. The gesture made her skin crawl. "Listen, I've been thinking about what I said last month, the vow renewal. Let's do it. Something big. Invite everyone. Show them what 15 years of marriage looks like. Natalie looked up at him. The man she'd loved, the man she'd built, the man who called her useful. That sounds perfect, she said. I'll start planning today. Gregory's smile widened. I knew you'd love the idea. This is going to be amazing. He left for the office an hour later. Executive meeting, strategy session, building his empire. Natalie sat alone in their kitchen and began making lists, not for a vow renewal, for war. Because Gregory had taught her something valuable in that security footage. The cruelest betrayals aren't committed in moments of passion. They're planned, calculated, executed with precision over months of careful deception. She'd learned from the best. Now she'd show him what a woman with nothing left to lose could build from the ruins of her shattered faith. The vow renewal would happen exactly as Gregory wanted. It would be the last thing he ever wanted from her. Chapter 2. The love that was real. Natalie didn't sleep after Gregory left for work that morning, but she didn't cry either, and somewhere between exhaustion and clarity, she made herself remember the truth about the man she'd married. Not the man who'd called her useful on security camera footage. Not the man planning his escape with his pregnant mistress. The real Gregory, the one who'd existed before ambition poisoned everything good. She needed to remember him, not for forgiveness, but for something darker. Revenge required understanding what had been destroyed. She pulled out the old photo albums from the hall closet. Dust covered the leather bindings. Gregory hadn't looked at these in years. The early photos hurt to see. They'd met at a community center fundraiser. Natalie was 23, pharmaceutical sales representative, ambitious and driven. Gregory was 22, volunteer coordinator for the homeless outreach program, despite working 2 jobs and living in his car. She'd watched him serve dinner to families with such gentle dignity that something in her chest had cracked open. When her car wouldn't start after the event, Gregory had given her his last $40 for a taxi home. She'd discovered later he walked 7 miles to his overnight shift at a warehouse, arriving with blistered feet and that quiet pride of someone who'd rather suffer than fail to help. Natalie had tracked him down the next week to repay him. He'd refused the money but accepted her invitation to dinner. Their first date, a $12 pizza split between them because that's all Gregory could afford. He'd been embarrassed, apologizing for not taking her somewhere nicer. Natalie had been enchanted by his honesty, by the way he counted out exact change, by the determination in his eyes when he talked about his dreams. I'm going to be someone, he'd said, sauce on his chin, hope in his voice. Someone who helps people, someone who makes a difference. You're already someone, Natalie had told him. You're the kind of person who gives away his last $40 to a stranger. Gregory had looked at her like she'd handed him the world. They'd fallen in love in parking lots and late-night diners, in stolen moments between his shifts. Gregory working himself to exhaustion while studying for exams, Natalie massaging his shoulders at 2 in the morning when he'd fall asleep over accounting textbooks. Him making her laugh with impressions of difficult professors, her believing in him with a faith that felt religious. The proposal came after Gregory passed his CPA exam. He'd saved for over a year to buy a $200 ring from a pawn shop. They'd been walking through the park, where they'd had their 3rd date. Gregory had dropped to one knee, tears streaming down his face. You deserve diamonds and mansions, he'd said, voice breaking. You deserve a man who can give you everything. But all I have is a promise that I'll love you harder than any rich man ever could, that I'll spend every day making you proud, that I'll never forget you saw me when I was invisible. Natalie had cried so hard she couldn't speak. She'd nodded, pulled him up, kissed him like her life depended on it. You're everything I want, she'd whispered against his lips. Their wedding had been in her parents' backyard. 40 guests, folding chairs, homemade food. The whole event cost less than most people spent on flowers, but Gregory's vows had been priceless. Natalie, you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. You saw potential in a man sleeping in his car. You gave me hope when I had nothing else. I promise you, I will build a life worthy of your faith. I will make you proud. I will never let you regret choosing me. Natalie had believed every word. The first years had been hard, but beautiful. Gregory working entry-level accounting jobs while studying for advanced certifications. Natalie climbing the pharmaceutical sales ladder, her commissions paying their bills. She loved supporting him, loved watching him grow. When Gregory got his first real position at Premier Healthcare, Natalie had thrown him a surprise party, bought him a Rolex she couldn't afford with an engraving, "From nothing to everything, I always knew." Gregory had cried in her arms that night, "I don't deserve you." "Yes, you do," she'd whispered back. "You deserve everything good in this world." But looking at the photos now, Natalie could see the exact moment things began to shift. 3 years into marriage, Gregory's first big promotion to senior analyst. In the photo from his celebration dinner, his arm was around Natalie's waist, but his eyes were on his boss across the table. That hungry look she'd mistaken for ambition was actually the beginning of his transformation. 5 years in, Natalie had mentioned wanting to start trying for a baby. Gregory had snapped at her. "Not now. I'm up for team lead. We need to focus on my career." My career, not ours. Mine. 7 years, the first pregnancy loss. Natalie had miscarried at work, rushed to the emergency room. She'd called Gregory from the hospital bed. He'd been at a conference in Seattle. "Baby, I'm so sorry," he'd said, voice distracted, "but I'm giving the keynote tomorrow. Your mum can stay with you, right? I'll be home in 3 days. They hadn't talked. Gregory had come home exhausted, kissed her forehead, and gone to bed. Her grief invisible. 10 years. Gregory's promotion to vice president. Natalie had organized a party at their home, catered food, 50 guests. Gregory had barely thanked her, too busy networking. She'd cleaned up alone at midnight. 12 years. The third pregnancy loss. The one that required emergency surgery. The one that took away Natalie's ability to ever carry a child. She'd been in the hospital for 4 days. Gregory had visited twice. Her mother had been the one holding her hand when the doctor explained she'd need a hysterectomy. Her sister had helped her home. Gregory had sent flowers with a card. "Thinking of you. Important client meeting today. Love you." Natalie had forgiven him. Made excuses. She was being selfish, expecting him to drop everything, but sitting in her kitchen now, staring at photos of who they'd been, Natalie saw the truth with brutal clarity. She hadn't been selfish. She'd been erased, slowly, methodically, one missed moment at a time, until the woman who'd believed in Gregory when he slept in his car had become the woman he called useful before discarding her. Natalie opened Gregory's home office. She'd avoided this room for years. It was his space, his sanctuary. She'd respected that boundary like she'd respected everything else he'd demanded. No more boundaries. She searched his desk, his files, his locked drawers. The key was taped under his keyboard. In the bottom drawer, hidden behind old tax returns, she found a box. Inside, every gift she'd ever given him. The Rolex with its engraving, the cufflinks from their 10th anniversary, letters she'd written during his certification exams, photos from their honeymoon, all of it boxed up like trash awaiting disposal. But beneath the gifts, she found something that made her hands shake. A journal, Gregory's handwriting, dated entries spanning 5 years. Natalie sat on his office floor and read her husband's true thoughts. Year 10. Natalie is becoming a problem. She wants a baby when I need to focus on the VP track. Her constant emotional needs are exhausting. I married too young. Year 11. Sometimes I look at her and feel suffocated by everything she sacrificed. She brings up the early days like poverty is romantic. I want to forget being that desperate man. Year 12. The hysterectomy is a blessing in disguise. No kids means no complications when I'm ready to leave. She'll recover. She always does. That resilience is useful. Year 13. Met Jane today, executive assistant. Everything Natalie isn't. Ambitious, sophisticated, childless by choice. She understands what it takes to succeed. Year 14. Jane is pregnant. My legacy, my real family. Time to plan the exit strategy. Natalie will be devastated, but she'll survive. She's pathetically resilient. Year 15. Vow renewal set. Public display of effort before filing for divorce. Frame it as Natalie's coldness after infertility. She'll look like the villain. Perfect. The final entry was dated 1 week ago. Promotion secured, CFO. Everything Natalie helped me build. I almost feel bad about what I'm going to do to her. Almost. But she served her purpose. Time to move forward with someone who matches who I've become. Natalie closed the journal. She sat in Gregory's office as dawn light filtered through the blinds. She didn't cry. Something beyond grief had taken root in her chest. Something that felt like ice and fire simultaneously. Gregory had documented his own cruelty, had written down every betrayal, every manipulation. He'd kept a record of how thoroughly he'd destroyed the woman who'd loved him unconditionally, and he'd left it where she could find it. Natalie photographed every page with her phone, returned everything exactly as she'd found it. By the time Gregory came home that evening, Natalie had prepared his favorite dinner. She'd styled her hair the way he used to love. She'd put on the dress he'd bought her for their anniversary 3 years ago. She served him dinner with a smile, asked about his day, laughed at his stories, played the devoted wife so perfectly that Gregory relaxed. "I've been thinking about the vow renewal," Natalie said, as they finished dessert. "I want it to be special, not just for us, but for everyone who supported us." "Whatever you want, baby," Gregory said, checking his phone, probably texting Jane. "I was thinking we could invite everyone from Premier. Your colleagues, the board members, Malcolm Pierce. Show them what a real partnership looks like." Gregory looked up, interested. "The board would be good? Solid move for optics?" "Exactly what I thought," Natalie said. "We should make it an event, something people will remember." "You always know how to make me look good," Gregory said, standing to clear dishes. "This is why we work." He kissed the top of her head, left for his office to finish some reports. Natalie sat alone at their dining table. Gregory had taught her everything she needed to know about revenge. He'd shown her that the cruelest betrayals weren't passionate mistakes. They were calculated, documented, executed with precision. She'd learned from the best teacher. Now she'd show him what happened when a useful woman became a dangerous one. The vow renewal would be exactly what Gregory wanted. An event people would remember. Just not the way he imagined. Chapter 3. The Three Alliances. Natalie became the wife Gregory had always taken for granted, except this time every gesture carried weight he couldn't see, every smile hid strategy he couldn't imagine, and every act of devotion was a weapon being sharpened for the war ahead. For 3 weeks, she played her role perfectly. She woke before Gregory, made his coffee exactly how he liked it, laid out his suits. She brought him lunch at his office, always arriving when Jane was visible, always kissing him in the lobby where colleagues could see, always posting photos on social media with captions about lucky wives and 15-year love stories. Gregory relaxed into her performance, believed his manipulation was working. He had no idea Natalie was building her own plan with the same cold calculation he'd used. She joined the Premier Healthcare Wives Social Club, something she'd avoided for years because the gossip felt toxic. Now toxicity was useful. Information was currency. The first meeting was at Rebecca Chen's house. The wives gathered in her sunroom, drinking wine, comparing vacation homes and discussing their husbands' careers like chess pieces. Jane's name came up within the first hour. "I heard she's sleeping with one of the executives," Rebecca said, voice low with scandal. "My husband won't say who, but apparently it's serious." "I know who," said Diane Foster, wife of the General Counsel. "Gregory Peck, the new CFO. They've been together for months." Natalie's face remained neutral, sympathetic, curious. "Poor Natalie Peck," another wife said. "Does anyone know her? Someone should warn her." "I'm Natalie Peck," Natalie said quietly. The room went silent. Wine glasses froze mid-sip. "I know about the affair," Natalie continued, voice steady. "I've known for weeks. I'm handling it privately." The sympathy that flooded the room was instant. These women knew betrayal. But one woman didn't offer sympathy. She offered information. Linda Morrison, married to Premier's head of human resources, leaned forward. Jane bragged about it at the executive assistant happy hour last month, said she was going to, quote, steal Gregory from his pathetic doormat wife who gave up everything for a man who never loved her. The room erupted in outrage. The wives circled Natalie like protective wolves. But Natalie listened to Linda. What else did Jane say? That you think the affair just started, that Gregory has been planning to leave you for over a year, that the vow renewal is a setup to make him look good before he files for divorce. Linda's expression darkened. She laughed about it. Natalie absorbed this confirmation without expression. Thank you for telling me. There's more, Linda said. Jane has done this before 3 times. Targets successful married men, gets pregnant, empties their bank accounts during divorce proceedings. She's married, Diane added. Husband is a truck driver, long-haul routes, gone most of the year, has 2 kids with him. Natalie filed away every detail. By the time she left, she had 5 allies among Premier's most connected wives and a list of Jane's previous victims. The next morning, Natalie made her first strategic move. She called Malcolm Pierce's office and requested a meeting. Malcolm was Premier's largest private investor and Gregory's biggest champion. Malcolm's assistant tried to deflect. Mr. Pierce's calendar is fully booked. Tell him Natalie Peck needs 15 minutes to discuss concerns about company expense irregularities, Natalie said. I believe it affects his investment. She got the meeting within 2 hours. Malcolm's office overlooked the city from the 45th floor. He was a man in his 60s, sharp-eyed and shrewd. Mrs. Peck. He shook her hand firmly. Your husband is one of our brightest talents. What concerns do you have? Natalie placed a folder on his desk. I was organizing our home finances and noticed some irregularities in Gregory's expense reports. I wanted to bring them to your attention before they became a larger problem. Malcolm opened the folder. Inside, highlighted credit card statements showing thousands charged to Premier's corporate account for dinners at Bella Notte, all on Thursday nights, hotel room bookings on company cards, car service charges for personal trips. I'm worried Gregory's assistant might be embezzling and setting him up, Natalie said. These charges don't match his calendar. I don't want him to get blamed for something he didn't know about. Malcolm's expression hardened. These are significant amounts. I know Gregory would never deliberately misuse company funds, Natalie said. He's too ethical, but someone with access to his accounts might be taking advantage. You're right to bring this to my attention, Malcolm said. I'll have our internal audit team investigate quietly. Natalie thanked him and left. The seed was planted. When the affair came to light, Malcolm would remember Natalie's concern for the company. He'd remember who was trustworthy. Her second alliance required more courage. Natalie tracked down David Mitchell through social media, Jane's husband. She sent him a private message asking to meet. He agreed immediately. They met at a truck stop diner 30 miles outside the city. David was a large man with tired eyes and calloused hands. You're Natalie, he said as she slid into the booth. The wife. You're David, the husband. How long have you known? He asked. 3 weeks. You? 2 months. Followed her to your husband's apartment downtown. David's hands shook around his coffee cup. We have 2 kids, girls, 8 and 10. She told them Daddy works too much. That's why Mommy's sad. She's setting them up to hate me. Natalie reached across the table and took his hand. I'm sorry. She's pregnant, David said, voice breaking, with his baby. Told me she couldn't have more kids because of medical problems. She lied about everything. I know about the pregnancy, Natalie said. I saw the security footage. They sat in silence, 2 strangers connected by the same betrayal. I did some research, Natalie said carefully. Jane has done this before. 3 previous affairs, all with married executives. Same pattern every time. David's jaw tightened. The medical records. You found them too. Her doctor's files. I have access to her email. She's high risk. Pregnancy is dangerous for her at this age, but she's using it to trap your husband, David pulled out his phone, showed Natalie an email thread. Look at this. Messages between Jane and her friend Alicia. Jane bragging about her plan, about researching Gregory's finances before getting pregnant, about timing the affair to coincide with his promotion. One message made Natalie's blood run cold. This baby probably won't make it past 6 months given my history, but by then I'll have the house and half his assets. Either way, I win. She's using the baby as a weapon, David said. She knows it's high risk. She's planning for it to fail. Natalie looked at this broken man. We can destroy them both, together. Are you willing? Tell me what you need, David said. They spent 2 hours planning, sharing evidence, building a coordinated strategy. By the time Natalie left, she had an ally who wanted justice as badly as she did. Her third alliance was the most crucial. Natalie leveraged every pharmaceutical industry connection she'd built over 15 years. She reached out to Dr. Simone Winters, Premier Healthcare's chief medical officer, and the only woman on the executive board. They met for lunch at a restaurant far from Premier's headquarters. Dr. Winters was a woman in her 50s who'd fought her way to the top of a male-dominated industry. Natalie Peck, Dr. Winters said, I've heard your name. Your husband speaks highly of your support. I didn't ask to meet about my husband, Natalie said. I have a proposal that could revolutionize patient advocacy at Premier. She presented a comprehensive plan for a patient outreach program using her pharmaceutical contacts, a partnership that would generate positive publicity and position Premier as an industry leader. Dr. Winters listened, asked sharp questions, pushed back on weak points. By dessert, she was interested. This would require significant resources, Dr. Winters said. I can secure pharmaceutical partnerships that would offset costs, Natalie countered. My industry connections are extensive. Why bring this to me? Why not have your husband present it? Natalie met her eyes directly. Because I've spent 15 years supporting my husband's career, I'd like to build something that's mine. Dr. Winters smiled. I respect that. I'll bring this to the board myself. If they approve, I want you as the senior consultant. You'd report directly to me and the board, not to any C-suite executive. That's exactly what I want, Natalie said. The board approved the project within a week. Natalie was offered a senior consulting position with direct board oversight. Premier's press release praised Natalie's industry expertise. Gregory found out from a colleague's congratulations email. He called Natalie immediately. What the hell is this? You took a job at my company without telling me. You said I should build my own career, Natalie said sweetly. I'm building it. You report to the board, over my level. Dr. Winters thought it was best. Do you have a problem with me succeeding, Gregory? The silence was sharp with fury. We'll discuss this tonight. I have a planning meeting for the vow renewal tonight, Natalie said. We'll discuss it when I'm free. She hung up before he could respond. That night, Gregory came home radiating controlled anger. He found Natalie in their bedroom, surrounded by wedding planning materials. You undermined me, he said. I took a job I'm qualified for, Natalie said. How is that undermining you? By going around me, by making me look like I can't control my own wife. Natalie looked up at him. I'm not something you control, Gregory. I'm your partner, remember? Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Don't push me, Natalie. You won't like what happens. Is that a threat? She asked calmly. Gregory stepped closer. It's a reminder. You exist in my world because I allow it. No, Natalie said, standing to face him. You exist in the position you're in because I built you. Don't you forget that. They stared at each other, the mask slipping on both sides. Gregory broke first. I'm going out. He left, probably to Jane. Natalie returned to her wedding planning with a small smile. 3 weeks until the vow renewal. 3 weeks until Gregory's carefully constructed world began to collapse. She'd built 3 strategic alliances, Malcolm Pierce watching the company finances, David Mitchell gathering evidence on Jane, Dr. Simone Winters giving her power within Premier. Gregory thought he was the strategist in this marriage. He was about to learn he'd been playing chess against a master. The vow renewal invitations went out the next morning. 150 guests, every Premier executive, every board member, Gregory's family, Natalie's family, colleagues, friends, everyone who mattered in their lives, everyone who would witness what came next. Gregory saw the guest list and smiled. This is perfect. I know, Natalie said. It's going to be an event no one forgets. You've outdone yourself, Gregory said. This is why I married you. I remember, Natalie said. You needed someone useful. Gregory didn't catch the edge in her voice. He kissed her forehead and left for work. Natalie watched him go. 3 weeks. The countdown had begun. Chapter 4. The Hidden Pregnancy. Natalie found the pregnancy test on a Tuesday morning, and in that moment, reality shifted into something darker than any security footage could have revealed. She'd been cleaning the master bathroom when she saw it in the trash can. A home pregnancy test. Positive. 2 bright pink lines. Natalie stood holding the test, confusion flooding through her before understanding crashed in like ice water. This test wasn't hers, couldn't be hers. She'd had a hysterectomy 3 years ago. This test was dated 3 days ago according to the digital display. 3 days ago, when Gregory had claimed he was working late on quarterly reports. Natalie checked the bathroom more carefully, found a receipt in the same trash. CVS Pharmacy, purchased the night before last. He'd brought Jane here, to their home, to their bedroom. Let her take a pregnancy test in Natalie's bathroom. The violation was complete. Natalie's hands shook as she remembered the home security system she'd installed 6 months ago. Gregory didn't know about it. She'd set it up after a break-in scare, hidden cameras in smoke detectors. Never mentioned it because Gregory would have called her paranoid. Now she pulled up the footage on her phone, scrolling back to 3 nights ago. What she saw made her physically sick. Gregory's car pulling into their driveway at 8 in the evening, Jane getting out of the passenger seat, both laughing as they entered through the garage. The kitchen camera caught them kissing against the refrigerator, the same refrigerator covered in photos of Natalie and Gregory's life together. Bedroom camera footage showed them in Natalie's bed, Jane wearing Natalie's silk robe, the robe Gregory had given Natalie for their anniversary. Jane picked up the framed photo on Natalie's nightstand, their wedding photo, and laughed. Natalie turned up the audio. Jane's voice mocking, "This is my house now, my husband, my life. That barren witch is just keeping it warm for me." Gregory's laughter, "Few more weeks, baby. The vow renewal is set. After that I file for divorce and she's gone. Then we start our real family." Jane walked around the bedroom touching Natalie's things, opened her jewelry box. "Can I have these? I like this one." "Take whatever you want," Gregory said. "It'll all be yours soon anyway." Jane picked up one of Natalie's medical journals from the nightstand, documentation of her pregnancy losses and hysterectomy. Did you ever actually love her? Or was it always just using her for money? Gregory's response destroyed the last fragment of the man Natalie had married. "I loved her like you love a useful tool. She served her purpose. Got me through the lean years. But you don't stay with your training wheels once you learn to ride the bike. What if she fights the divorce? She won't. She's too beaten down, too grateful I married her. I'll frame it as her coldness after the infertility issues. Make her look unstable. She'll take whatever I offer to avoid public humiliation." Jane had taken the pregnancy test then. Natalie watched her walk into the bathroom, watched Gregory follow, watched them wait for the result together. When the test showed positive, Gregory had cried, happy tears, had picked Jane up and spun her around in Natalie's bedroom. "This is everything," he'd said. "Our family, our future, everything that woman couldn't give me." The footage ended with them leaving, Jane still wearing Natalie's robe. Natalie watched the entire sequence 4 times before she could breathe normally. She'd known about the affair, known about the baby, known Gregory was planning to leave. But this was different. This was desecration. This was bringing his mistress into the home Natalie had made, the bed where Natalie had grieved her lost pregnancies. This was cruelty elevated to an art form. Natalie sat on her bedroom floor, and something inside her crystallized into diamond-hard resolve. She'd been planning to expose Gregory at the vow renewal, destroy his reputation, take half of everything. That wasn't enough anymore. Natalie called her attorney, not the family law specialist, the litigation specialist who handled complex fraud cases. Rachel Morrison answered on the second ring. "Natalie, what's wrong?" "I need you to prepare for war," Natalie said. They met at Rachel's office that afternoon. Natalie brought everything: the security footage from Bella Notte, Gregory's journal, the home security footage, credit card statements, the pregnancy test receipt. Rachel watched it all with growing fury. "This is one of the most calculated betrayals I've ever seen. What can I do legally? In this state, adultery affects asset division. If he used marital assets to fund the affair, and he did, you can claim reimbursement. That home he's buying with Jane, if any down payment came from joint accounts, you can go after it. What else? The journal is admissible. His own words documenting intentional deception. A judge will not look favorably on this." Rachel pulled up more documents. "I had my investigator look into Jane Mitchell. There's a pattern. 3 previous affairs with married executives, each time she got pregnant. Each time pregnancies ended tragically in late-term complications. Each time she walked away with substantial settlements. Life insurance?" Natalie's skin went cold. Her previous affair partners all took out large life insurance policies naming her as beneficiary when she got pregnant. 2 pregnancies ended in medical emergencies where Jane nearly died. The insurance paid substantial sums. "She's done this before," Natalie said slowly. "The pregnancy is a weapon." "More than that." Rachel pulled up medical records. "Jane has documented history of placental complications. Her doctor advised against any future pregnancies, said another pregnancy would be life-threatening." "She knows this pregnancy is high risk," Natalie said. "She's banking on it. Either the pregnancy succeeds and she gets the house and assets, or it fails and she gets insurance money. She wins either way. And Gregory has no idea he's been targeted." "None of them do until it's too late," Rachel said. Natalie stared at the evidence. Part of her, the part that remembered loving Gregory, wanted to warn him, wanted to save him from Jane's manipulation. But then she remembered his voice on that security footage. "You don't stay with your training wheels once you learn to ride the bike." She remembered him calling her barren, useful, a tool. "Gregory made his choice," Natalie said. "He chose Jane. Let him have exactly what he chose." "We need to be strategic about when we reveal this," Rachel said. "If we expose Jane too early, Gregory becomes a victim and public sympathy shifts to him." "I know," Natalie said. "Let them believe they're winning right up until they realize they've destroyed each other." Over the next week, Natalie made her preparations with surgical precision. She secured all medical documentation from her miscarriages and hysterectomy, every hospital record, every piece of evidence showing Gregory had been absent during her worst moments. She copied every joint financial record, every account, every investment, every asset accumulated during their marriage, most funded by her salary while Gregory built his career. She met with David Mitchell again, showed him the evidence of Jane's pattern, watched him break down as he realized his wife was a professional fraud artist. "What do we do?" David asked, destroyed. "We let them proceed with their plan," Natalie said. "Let Gregory file for divorce thinking he's in control. Let Jane think she's won. Then we reveal everything simultaneously." "She'll lose our daughters," David said. "Yes," Natalie said gently. "Your daughters deserve a parent who isn't using people as income streams." David agreed to coordinate his divorce filing with Natalie's response. Natalie's final preparation was the cruelest and most necessary. She scheduled a meeting with Premier Healthcare's board. not to discuss her patient advocacy program, to discuss insurance fraud. She presented Malcolm Pierce and the board with evidence that Gregory had manipulated company health insurance to cover Jane's fertility treatments, had used company resources to research maternity benefits for a non-employee. "This is embezzlement of company benefits," Natalie explained. "Gregory is using Premier's insurance policies to fund his affair and his mistress's pregnancy." The board members' faces went from shock to fury. "You're bringing this to our attention even though it destroys your husband's career?" one board member asked. "I'm bringing it to your attention because fraud is fraud," Natalie said, "and because when this becomes public, and it will, I want Premier to be on the right side of it." The board voted unanimously to launch an immediate investigation. Gregory would be placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. "When should we inform him?" Malcolm asked. "After the vow renewal," Natalie said. "Give him one last moment of believing he's won." As Natalie left that meeting, she felt the weight of what she'd set in motion. She'd ended Gregory's career, guaranteed criminal charges, set him up for public destruction. Part of her still grieved the man he'd been, the man sleeping in his car, the man who'd proposed with a $200 ring and tears of hope. But that man was gone, dead. Killed by the man who'd called her useful and brought his pregnant mistress into her home to mock her infertility. Natalie drove home through evening traffic. The house was empty. Gregory was probably with Jane, planning their future. He had no idea the vow renewal would be his public execution. Natalie walked through her home. Every room held memories of who they'd been. The kitchen where Gregory had kissed her after his first job offer. The living room where they'd danced to their wedding song. The bedroom where he'd held her after the first miscarriage, promising they'd try again. Promises he'd broken, memories he'd poisoned. She made dinner for one, ate in silence. 2 weeks until the vow renewal. 2 weeks until Gregory learned that the woman he'd called his training wheels had become the thing that would destroy him completely. She'd given him 15 years of unconditional love. Now she'd give him the lesson he'd earned. Some betrayals don't deserve forgiveness. They deserve annihilation. Chapter 5. The Vow Renewal Trap. The morning of the vow renewal ceremony arrived with perfect weather, and Natalie woke, knowing this would be the last day anyone would look at Gregory Peck without disgust. She'd slept surprisingly well. No nightmares, no anxiety, just the calm that comes from knowing every piece is in position. Gregory had left before dawn for a workout, meeting Jane for one final celebration before he destroyed his marriage publicly. Let them celebrate. They had no idea. Natalie got ready alone. The dress she'd chosen wasn't traditional white but deep champagne that made her skin glow. Elegant, expensive, powerful. She'd paid for it herself from her consulting income, the job that infuriated Gregory because it gave her independence. Her mother arrived at 9. Elena Wood was a strong woman who'd built a life for her daughters after Natalie's father left. She understood survival, she understood revenge. "You're sure about this?" Elena asked, zipping up Natalie's dress. "I've never been more sure of anything," Natalie said. "He's going to be destroyed, publicly, permanently." "He destroyed me privately for years," Natalie said. "Now we're even." Elena kissed her daughter's forehead. "The sweetest revenge is the one they don't see coming." "He never saw me at all," Natalie said. "That was his mistake." The venue was the Riverside Botanical Gardens. 150 guests, string quartet, white roses everywhere, champagne fountain, 7-tier cake, everything Gregory wanted for his perfect performance. Natalie had spared no expense. She'd used their joint account for every dollar. Let Gregory think she was foolish. The fool was about to become the master. Guests arrived starting at 2. Premier Healthcare's entire executive team, the board, Malcolm Pierce in the front row, Dr. Simone Winters with her husband, the Wives' Social Club, all knowing what was coming, positioned strategically. Gregory's family, his mother who'd always looked down on Natalie for being too ambitious, his brother who'd borrowed money they'd never repaid. Natalie's family, her mother, her sister Carmen, cousins and aunts who'd watched Natalie sacrifice everything. Jane Mitchell was there too. Gregory had insisted she be invited as his valued executive assistant. She sat in the back, wearing white, deliberately cruel, her hand resting on her barely visible baby bump. Confident, smug, David Mitchell sat 3 rows behind Jane, eyes red from crying but jaw set with determination. He wore a recording device. At 3 o'clock, the ceremony began. Gregory stood at the altar, looking perfect. Designer suit, styled hair. That practiced smile that used to make Natalie's heart race and now made her stomach turn. Natalie walked down the aisle alone. She'd refused her mother's offer to escort her. This moment was hers. Gregory's face when he saw her was gratifying. Genuine attraction. Possessive pride. The officiant began with traditional words about love and commitment and marriage. Natalie barely heard him. She was watching the guests, watching Malcolm checking his watch, watching Dr. Winters with her knowing look, watching Jane scrolling through her phone, bored. "Gregory," the officiant said, "please share your vows." Gregory pulled out prepared cards. Generic language, lack of personal details, probably copied from wedding websites. He read them with his executive voice, hitting all the expected notes. The guests smiled. Some wiped tears. "Natalie," the officiant said, "your vows." Natalie didn't have cards, didn't need them. "Gregory," she began, her voice carrying, 15 years ago I met a man sleeping in his car. A man with nothing but dreams and determination. A man who gave his last $40 to a stranger, then walked 7 miles to work rather than fail to help someone." Gregory's smile widened. This was the narrative he wanted. "I fell in love with that man," Natalie continued. "I believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. I paid off his student debt. I worked 70-hour weeks while he built his career. I sacrificed my body trying to give him children, enduring 3 pregnancy losses and a hysterectomy largely alone, because he was always too busy building the future we were supposed to share." The smile started fading. "I gave him everything," Natalie said. "My money, my career, my health, my devotion. I was useful." The word landed like a slap. Gregory's eyes widened. "And in return," Natalie said, "I got a man who documented my usefulness in a journal, who wrote about how my emotional needs were exhausting, who called my hysterectomy a blessing because no kids meant no complications for his eventual divorce, who planned his exit strategy while I planned this ceremony." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Gregory went pale. "So these are my vows, Gregory. I vow to never again sacrifice my worth for someone who sees me as a tool. I vow to never again shrink myself for a man who needs me small to feel big." Natalie reached into her bouquet and pulled out a small remote. She clicked it. The large screens positioned around the garden lit up. Security footage from Bella Notte appeared. Gregory and Jane at their Thursday table, the timestamp clear, the intimacy undeniable. The crowd went silent. More footage. Jane revealing her pregnancy. Gregory's joy bigger than anything he'd shown Natalie. Jane and Gregory house hunting, signing papers with a divorce attorney. Then the audio from 2 nights ago. Gregory's voice echoing through speakers. "To finally being free of 15 years of guilt. To leaving behind the woman who trapped me when I was vulnerable. She was useful. Now she's just in the way." 150 people watched Gregory's face crumble. But Natalie wasn't done. More footage appeared. Their home security camera. Gregory bringing Jane into their bedroom. Jane wearing Natalie's robe, mocking her infertility. Gregory laughing, promising Jane everything. The crowd's shock turned to outrage. Someone started crying. Gregory's mother stood up, face white. Malcolm Pierce's expression had gone from shock to barely controlled fury. "These are the facts," Natalie said calmly. 8 months of systematic betrayal, a mistress carrying his child, a divorce planned without my knowledge, my home violated, my medical trauma mocked, my 15 years of sacrifice repaid with deliberate cruelty. She turned to face Gregory fully. "I planned this vow renewal to remind everyone what real love looks like, what I gave you, what you destroyed, and to show you publicly what betrayal destroys. Natalie placed her bouquet on the altar. I vow to never waste another moment of my life on you. She walked down the aisle. Her mother and sister fell into step beside her. They walked out while chaos erupted behind them. Gregory tried to speak but was drowned out by angry voices. Malcolm Pierce was already on his phone. The board members were conferring urgently. The Wives' Social Club had surrounded Jane, blocking her escape. David Mitchell stood and walked toward his wife. "We need to talk about your pattern of fraud," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Jane tried to run. The Premier security team blocked the exits. Natalie didn't stay to watch. She'd seen enough. She got into the limousine waiting outside. Her mother and sister joined her. As they pulled away, Natalie's phone rang. Rachel Morrison. "It's done," Rachel asked. "It's done." Gregory's attorney just called in a panic, wants to negotiate settlement immediately. "Tell him no negotiations until after the board investigation," Natalie said. "Let Gregory sit with what he's lost." "Natalie," her mother said softly, "are you okay?" Natalie looked out the window at the city where she'd built Gregory from nothing, the city where she'd lost herself. "I'm better than okay," she said. "I'm free." Her phone lit up with notifications. Social media was exploding. Someone had live-streamed the ceremony. The footage was going viral. "Cheating executive exposed at vow renewal" was trending. Good. Let everyone see what Gregory Peck had done. But more importantly, let every woman who'd ever sacrificed herself for an ungrateful partner see that there was a way to reclaim power. The fallout began immediately. By evening, Premier's board had voted to terminate Gregory's employment with cause. No severance. No benefits. The internal investigation into insurance fraud would proceed with law enforcement cooperation. Malcolm Pierce released a statement. "We trusted Gregory Peck with significant responsibility. He violated that trust in every possible way." Jane's husband filed for divorce and full custody. The evidence of her pattern made the custody battle quick. Jane lost everything. Gregory's attorney called Rachel 17 times. Each time, Rachel's response was the same. "My client will respond through legal channels when she's ready." Natalie spent that night at her sister's house, safe, surrounded by family, watching the man who'd called her useful become the most hated executive in healthcare. She didn't feel triumphant, didn't feel vindicated. She felt tired, relieved, and strangely at peace. The vow renewal had been a trap, but not the kind Gregory had planned. He'd wanted public devotion before private destruction. She'd given him public destruction that ended his ability to destroy anyone else. The war wasn't over. There would be legal battles, divorce proceedings, asset division fights. But the crucial battle, the one for her dignity, her truth, her worth, that battle was won. Gregory had spent 8 months planning to destroy her quietly. She'd spent 3 weeks preparing to destroy him spectacularly. And in the end, the woman he'd called his training wheels had taught him the most important lesson of his life. Some betrayals are so complete, so calculated, so cruel, that the only appropriate response is total annihilation. She'd given him exactly what he deserved. Chapter 6. The Fallout. Gregory fights back. The morning after the vow renewal, Natalie woke to her phone vibrating continuously against the nightstand in her sister's guest room, and she knew immediately that Gregory wasn't going to surrender quietly. She'd slept 8 hours, the sleep of someone who'd finally put down a weight carried too long. Carmen knocked with coffee and a warning. "It started. You need to see this." Natalie took the coffee and opened her phone. Social media was on fire, but the narrative had split. The original video had 30 million views, but overnight, a counter-narrative had emerged. A carefully crafted PR campaign launched by professionals working through the night. Gregory's face was everywhere. Not the footage from Bella Notte, new footage. A video message he'd recorded and released through a crisis management firm. He sat in what looked like a hotel room, haggard and broken, speaking directly to camera with earnest vulnerability. "I made mistakes," Gregory said. voice rough with emotion. I had an affair. I hurt my wife in ways I can never take back, but what you witnessed yesterday wasn't the whole truth. It was a calculated attack by a woman whose mental health has been deteriorating for years. Natalie's hand tightened on her coffee cup. After Natalie's hysterectomy, she changed, Gregory continued. The grief consumed her. She became controlling, obsessive, paranoid. I tried to get her help, begged her to talk to someone. She refused. Instead, she began monitoring my every move, manipulating our finances to maintain control. He wiped his eyes. Yes, I grew close to Jane Mitchell. Yes, we crossed a line. But it only happened after Natalie had pushed me away for years, after she'd made our home a prison of suspicion. The video showed screenshots of text messages, allegedly from Natalie, filled with accusations, demands, threats, emails where she questioned every late night, every business trip. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Gregory said. I'm asking for context. My wife is suffering from a mental health crisis amplified by infertility trauma. Instead of getting help, she weaponized our private pain and destroyed me publicly. That's not justice. That's revenge from someone who needs psychiatric intervention. The video ended. I hope Natalie gets the help she desperately needs. And I hope people understand that social media trials based on edited footage aren't the whole story. The comments section was vicious. Half condemned Gregory, but the other half had shifted. Mental illness explains a lot. She clearly planned this for months. That's not normal. Poor guy tried to help her and she destroyed him. Natalie felt cold fury rising. The text messages were fake, photoshopped. She'd never sent those accusations. But Gregory knew that didn't matter. Once the narrative of unstable, vengeful wife took hold, facts became secondary. Her phone rang. Rachel Morrison. You've seen his video? Rachel asked. I'm watching my mental health be questioned by the man who documented his own betrayal, Natalie said. He's hired Samantha Cross, best crisis PR specialist in the country. This is going to get uglier. Let it get ugly. Natalie. He filed for divorce this morning, claiming emotional abuse, mental instability, requesting a restraining order. A restraining order? Against me? He claims you're dangerous, that he fears for his safety after your public attack. It's theater, but it's effective. What about the evidence? The journal, the footage? He's calling it manipulated, says you doctored footage, selectively edited his journal. His attorneys are claiming the vow renewal stunt proves your instability. Natalie sat down. He's smart. Yes, he's fighting strategically, making you the villain, and it's working on enough people to create reasonable doubt. What do I do? We respond with truth. All of it. Medical records showing he wasn't there. Financial records showing you funded his career. His journal, unedited, submitted to forensic analysis. We bury him in facts. And if facts aren't enough? Then we prepare for a long battle, Rachel said. Gregory is wounded but not dead. Wounded animals fight hardest. The strategy became clear over the next days. Gregory was waging a sophisticated counter-campaign. He gave interviews to sympathetic journalists, appeared on a podcast about men in difficult marriages, released more evidence of Natalie's alleged instability, including a video of them arguing where Natalie raised her voice. Conveniently edited to remove Gregory's provocation, he positioned Jane as a victim too, a woman who'd provided emotional support to a man trapped in an abusive marriage. The pregnancy was reframed as hope. Social media split further. Women who'd experienced infertility defended Natalie. Men who'd been accused of affairs defended Gregory. It became a proxy war for every relationship dispute. But Gregory's most effective move came a week later. He leaked selected company files, suggesting Natalie's patient advocacy program was built using Gregory's professional connections, that she'd leveraged his position for her consulting role. The headlines shifted. Scorned wife uses husband's career before destroying him. Dr. Simone Winters called Natalie into her office. Her expression was sympathetic but firm. The board is getting pressure, Dr. Winters said. Gregory's attorneys are threatening lawsuits, claiming you manipulated company resources. That's not true, Natalie said. My proposal was built on my pharmaceutical connections, not his. I know. I was there. But perception is reality in corporate politics. The board is asking me to put you on leave pending investigation. Natalie was placed on paid administrative leave. Her access to Premier was revoked. The patient advocacy program was put on hold. Gregory's victory lap on social media was subtle but devastating. Sometimes people will tear you down to elevate themselves. I hope the truth eventually prevails. Natalie sat in her sister's house and watched her professional reputation crumble alongside her personal one. The Wives' Social Club reached out with support, but even they were divided. Some believed Natalie completely. Others whispered that maybe she'd gone too far. The worst moment came when Natalie's own mother asked the question that cut deepest. "Baby," Elena said gently, "is any of what he's saying true? Did you become obsessive after the hysterectomy?" Natalie looked at her mother with disbelief. "You think I'm unstable?" "I think grief does things to people. I think losing the ability to have children broke something in you." "So his affair is justified?" "No. But maybe your revenge was disproportionate. Maybe you should have just divorced him quietly." That's when Natalie realized the full scope of Gregory's strategy. He wasn't just trying to win legal battles, he was trying to make Natalie doubt herself, make everyone doubt her, and it was working. The criminal investigation into insurance fraud proceeded, but slowly. Gregory's attorneys tied it up in procedural challenges. Premier's board dragged their feet, afraid of legal exposure. Jane's pregnancy became another weapon. She did a tearful interview about being caught in the crossfire, about fearing for her baby's health, about just wanting peace. The public ate it up. Pregnant woman as victim, more sympathetic than scorned wife. David Mitchell's divorce filing got buried. His evidence of Jane's pattern was dismissed as an angry husband's lies. Everything Natalie had built was crumbling. Her professional reputation questioned, her mental stability publicly debated, her moral high ground eroded, her support system wavering. 2 weeks after the vow renewal, Natalie sat alone in her sister's guest room and considered what Gregory had done. He'd taken her ultimate weapon, the truth, and buried it under enough doubt that truth became just one version of events. He'd weaponized her trauma, used her infertility as evidence of instability, made her 15 years of sacrifice look like obsessive control. He was smarter than she'd given him credit for, wounded but not defeated. Natalie's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You should have taken the quiet divorce. Now you've made an enemy who won't stop until you're destroyed. This is just the beginning. G." She stared at the message. Gregory wasn't defending himself. He was going on offense. He wanted her broken, professionally ruined, socially isolated, mentally questioned. He wanted her to regret exposing him. Natalie deleted the text, turned off her phone, sat in silence. For the first time since finding that security footage, she felt afraid, not of Gregory, of the possibility that he might actually win, that the man who'd betrayed her might emerge as the victim while she became the cautionary tale. But fear, Natalie was learning, was just another fuel, and she wasn't done fighting, not even close. Chapter 7. The Truth About the Baby, Game Changer. 3 weeks after the vow renewal, David Mitchell called Natalie with information that would shift the entire war, and his voice carried the weight of a man who'd discovered something that changed everything. "I found Jane's real medical records," David said without preamble. "You need to see this today." They met at the same truck stop diner. David looked like he'd aged a decade. The public battle over his daughters had been brutal. Jane was winning the PR war. But David's hands were steady as he slid a thick folder across the table. "I have a friend who works in medical records at County General," he said. "Jane had all her prenatal care there. He pulled everything." Natalie opened the folder. Medical records spanning a decade. Jane's obstetric history, pregnancy complications, doctor's notes that made Natalie's blood run cold. She's had 6 pregnancies, David said quietly. Our 2 daughters, then 4 others with different fathers. All 4 ended in late-term complications. All 4 resulted in substantial insurance payouts. Natalie read the doctor's notes. Patient advised against pregnancy due to severe placental abruption history. Likelihood of successful term pregnancy less than 20%. Continuation at 42 poses extreme maternal risk. Patient refused termination. Patient inquired about maximum life insurance coverage for pregnancy complications. She asked her doctor about insurance payouts, Natalie said. That's not even the worst part. David pulled out another document. I hired a private investigator. He found Jane's pattern, 3 previous affairs over 8 years, all with married executives. All resulted in pregnancies. All ended in late-term emergencies. The investigator's report was comprehensive. Jane's first affair with a law firm senior partner, pregnant at 5 months, placental abruption at 7 months. Baby didn't survive. Jane received $300,000 in insurance settlements plus $200,000 in divorce settlement. Second affair, VP at a tech company. Pregnant at 4 months. Severe preeclampsia at 6 months. Another lost baby, another insurance payout, $500,000. Third affair, CFO at pharmaceutical company. Pregnant at 6 months. Hemorrhaging. Insurance payout of $750,000. She's been doing this professionally, Natalie said. Getting pregnant with married men, letting pregnancies fail, collecting insurance money. And Gregory is next, David said. She researched him for months before engineering their meeting, learned his financial situation, his marriage problems, his ambitions. Does he know any of this? I tried to tell him, David said bitterly. Sent him the evidence. He blocked my number. Called me a jealous husband spreading lies. Natalie spread out the documents. Medical records, insurance claim forms, bank statements showing large deposits following each pregnancy loss. A pattern so clear it was almost artistic in its cruelty. Why hasn't this been exposed before? The men were humiliated, marriages destroyed, careers damaged. They paid Jane off quietly and signed NDAs rather than admit they'd been scammed. But you're fighting. Because she's using our daughters as props, David said. This isn't just about money. This is about my children. Natalie looked at the evidence, then at David. If we release this, it destroys Jane completely. But it also makes Gregory a victim. Public sympathy shifts to him. I know, David said. What matters more, destroying Jane or making sure Gregory pays? Part of her, the part that remembered loving Gregory, wanted to warn him, wanted to save him even after everything, but another part remembered his voice. She was useful. Now she's just in the way. Gregory made his choice, Natalie said slowly. He chose Jane, knowing I'd sacrificed everything. He doesn't get to be saved from consequences. So we let Jane destroy him? No, Natalie said. We expose Jane's pattern, but we do it showing Gregory knew or should have known. David pulled out one more document, text messages between Jane and her friend Alicia, recovered from Jane's iCloud backup. Jane's words, Gregory is perfect, rich enough to be worth it, arrogant enough to believe I chose him for love, desperate enough for a baby that he won't ask questions about my medical history. Another message. The pregnancy probably won't make it past 6 months, but that's fine. The insurance policy he just took out for $2 million with me as beneficiary will compensate. Either the baby survives and I get house plus assets, or it doesn't and I get insurance money. Win-win. Alicia's response, you're terrible. Jane, I'm a realist. These men use women all the time. I just turned it into a profitable business model. The messages were dated 3 months ago, before the vow renewal, while Gregory was planning his exit. This proves Jane's intent, Natalie said, but it also proves Gregory took out a $2 million life insurance policy on Jane's pregnancy. He was planning for the pregnancy to fail, David said, Or hoping it would fail so he could collect insurance without child support obligations, Natalie said. The realization was horrifying. Gregory isn't a victim. He's a co-conspirator. They sat absorbing the implications. Two predators who'd found each other. Gregory wanted Jane's pregnancy for optics, but hedged his bets with massive insurance. Jane wanted Gregory's money using a high-risk pregnancy, knowing it would either succeed and get her assets or fail and get insurance. They were using each other, both amoral, both calculating, both deserving of exactly what they'd gotten. "What do we do with this?" David asked. Natalie made her decision. "We give it to Premier's board. Let them see Gregory didn't just have an affair. He committed insurance fraud with a woman who has a documented pattern of scams. That ends his career permanently." "His career ended when he called me useful," Natalie said. "This just makes sure he can't rebuild." They took the evidence to Malcolm Pierce that afternoon, presented it all. Jane's medical history, the pattern of affairs and payouts, the text messages, the insurance policy Gregory had taken out through Premier's group benefits. Malcolm's fury was cold and precise. He used company insurance benefits to commit fraud, made Premier liable. Natalie showed him Gregory's journal entries about planning his exit. Combined with Jane's texts, it painted two people using Natalie's destruction as their bonding activity. Malcolm called an emergency board meeting. By end of day, Premier had taken decisive action. Gregory's employment terminated with cause. Criminal referral sent to State Insurance Fraud Division. Company attorneys filing civil suit to recover all benefits. Public statement released distancing Premier from Gregory's actions. The media coverage shifted overnight. Healthcare executive's affair partner has pattern of insurance fraud. Pregnant mistress targeted multiple executives in elaborate con. Gregory Peck under investigation for insurance fraud scheme. Public opinion swung hard. Jane wasn't a victim. She was a predator. Gregory wasn't a victim. He was her accomplice. The texts between them emerged. The insurance policy was exposed. Jane's previous affairs and payouts were documented. Gregory's counter-PR campaign collapsed. You can't claim victimhood when evidence shows you planned to profit from your affair partner's potential pregnancy complications. Jane's pregnancy became a liability. Her previous losses were reframed not as tragic medical events but as part of fraud. The custody battle shifted immediately. David's attorneys presented evidence. Family court removed the daughters from Jane's custody pending investigation. David got emergency temporary full custody. Jane's world imploded faster than Gregory's had. She lost her children, her home, her social standing. Every friend who'd supported her disappeared. Gregory lost everything too. No job, no career prospects, criminal investigation, civil lawsuits. His own family turned against him when they learned he'd planned to profit from a potentially failing pregnancy. But Natalie noticed something that disturbed her. She'd won. Completely. Gregory and Jane were both destroyed. Justice had been served. So why did she feel hollow? She sat in her sister's guest room that night, scrolling through news coverage, watching Gregory's career burn, watching Jane's fraud exposed. It should have felt satisfying. Instead, it felt empty. Because revenge, she was learning, wasn't the same as healing. Destroying Gregory didn't bring back the 15 years she'd lost. Didn't repair the damage from pregnancy losses he'd dismissed. Didn't restore the dreams they'd built. Rachel Morrison called with good news. Gregory's attorneys wanted to settle immediately. Full asset division in Natalie's favor. No contest. They wanted it over before criminal charges filed. "You won," Rachel said. "Everything." "I know," Natalie said. "You don't sound happy." "I'm not unhappy," Natalie said. "I'm just tired." She was tired of fighting, tired of being angry, tired of carrying the weight of what Gregory had done and what she'd had to do in response. Victory tasted like ash, because at the end of every war, even the winner has to live with what they became to win. Chapter 8. The choice that defines her. Natalie's true power. The morning Jane showed up at Natalie's sister's house was the morning Natalie learned that winning the war wasn't the same as winning peace, And sometimes the hardest victory is choosing what kind of person you become after someone destroys who you were. Carmen opened the door to find Jane standing on the porch, noticeably pregnant, face haggard and desperate, no makeup, cheap clothing, the polish completely gone. "I need to talk to Natalie," Jane said. Carmen started to close the door. "Absolutely not." "Please." Jane's voice cracked. "I have information she needs, about Gregory, about what he's planning next." Natalie appeared behind her sister. She'd heard the voice. Part of her wanted to slam the door. But curiosity won. "You have 5 minutes," Natalie said. They sat in the living room, Carmen hovering protectively. "Gregory's attorneys are planning something," Jane said without preamble. "A final play. They're going to claim you manipulated evidence, that you fabricated the text messages between me and Alicia, that the whole insurance fraud narrative is your revenge fantasy. The messages are backed up on iCloud, forensically verified," Natalie said. "They're going to say you hacked my account, planted fake messages. His attorneys found an expert witness who will testify the timestamps could have been altered. It's bullshit, but it'll create reasonable doubt." "Why are you telling me this?" Jane's laugh was bitter. "Because I'm pregnant, broke and facing criminal fraud charges. Because David is taking my daughters. Because Gregory threw me away the second things got complicated." "You expected loyalty from a man you were scamming." "I expected him to stick to the plan." Jane's mask slipped. "We had a deal. I help him exit his marriage with sympathy. He helps me secure financial future. But the moment you exposed him, he turned on me, started claiming I manipulated him." "You were manipulating him," Natalie said. "So was he." Jane stood, pacing. "You think Gregory didn't know about my past? He researched me as thoroughly as I researched him. He knew about the previous affairs, the insurance payouts. He chose me because of it." Natalie went very still. "What?" "Gregory was looking for someone who'd help him exit his marriage with minimal financial loss, someone who'd give him a baby without commitment, someone he could use the same way I was using him." Jane pulled out her phone. "This is from a month before we met at his office. Messages between Gregory and someone named Marcus." "Gregory. Need to find a way out of this marriage that doesn't cost me everything." "Marcus. Prenup?" "Gregory. No prenup. She funded my career. Courts will give her half, unless I can prove she's unstable or I have compelling reason to leave." "Marcus. Like another woman and a baby?" "Gregory. Exactly. But needs to be someone who won't demand marriage or create complications. Someone who'll take a settlement and go." "Marcus. I know someone. Woman who specializes in what you're describing, but she's expensive and dangerous." "Gregory. Set up the meeting." The next message showed a photo. Jane. "He hired you," Natalie said slowly, "to be his exit strategy." "We hired each other," Jane corrected. "I needed a target with enough assets. He needed someone who'd play pregnant mistress without demanding he actually leave his wife. We were using each other." "The pregnancy?" "Part of the plan. Get pregnant, let him play devoted father-to-be, make you look cold, exit with sympathy and minimal asset division." "But the insurance policy?" "His idea," Jane said if the pregnancy failed, we'd split the insurance payout. If it succeeded, I'd get a settlement to raise the baby quietly. Win-win." Natalie felt sick. "You're both monsters." "Yes," Jane said simply, "and now we're both facing consequences. So here's my proposal. I'll testify against Gregory. I'll admit everything. The planning, the manipulation, his knowledge of my past. He goes to prison, and you get complete vindication. In exchange for what? $500,000 and I disappear. Gregory gets destroyed. You get justice. I get money to start over." Natalie stared at this woman who'd slept with her husband in her bed, who'd mocked her infertility, who'd planned her destruction as business. "You're asking me to pay you to do the right thing," Natalie said. "I'm offering you a guarantee," Jane countered. Without my testimony, Gregory might convince people he was manipulated. With it, he goes down permanently. Isn't that worth $500,000? It was tempting. 500,000 to guarantee Gregory's complete destruction, to make certain he spent years in prison. I need to think about it, Natalie said. You have 24 hours, Jane said. After that, I'm talking to Gregory's attorneys. Whoever pays me first gets my testimony. Jane left. Natalie sat feeling dirty. Carmen sat beside her. You're not actually considering this. I could guarantee he goes to prison, Natalie said. By rewarding someone who helped destroy you, by letting Jane profit, by making sure justice is served. That's not justice, Carmen said firmly. That's revenge with extra steps, and it's turning you into something you're not. Natalie spent the next hours in turmoil, called Rachel Morrison. Technically legal, Rachel said. Paying for truthful testimony isn't illegal if it's actually truthful, but it's morally complicated, called her mother. Baby, Elena said gently, ask yourself, what kind of person do you want to be when this is over? That was the question that haunted Natalie through a sleepless night. What kind of person did she want to be? She'd spent 15 years being the woman who sacrificed everything for love. Then 3 months being the woman who planned systematic revenge. Now she was being asked to become the woman who paid off her husband's accomplice. Each version felt like a betrayal. By morning, Natalie had made her decision. She called Jane. I'm not giving you the money. Then Gregory walks, Jane said. Maybe he does. Maybe his attorneys create enough doubt. Maybe he rebuilds somewhere else. Natalie's voice was steady. But I'm not buying my justice, and I'm not helping you profit from destroying families. You're making a mistake. No, Natalie said. I'm choosing who I am, and I'm not the person who rewards people like you. Jane's response was venomous. You're going to regret this. I'll make sure Gregory's attorneys have everything they need to make you look like a vindictive liar. Do what you need to do, Natalie said. I'm done playing games with people who have no souls. She hung up. Within hours, Jane made good on her threat, contacted Gregory's attorneys, offered testimony that Natalie had manipulated evidence. The media narrative shifted. New evidence suggests scorned wife may have fabricated fraud claims. Natalie's attorney called in a panic. She's going to destroy everything we built. Let her try, Natalie said. You're willing to risk losing. I'm willing to risk losing rather than win by becoming as corrupt as they are, Natalie said. That's the only way I actually win. But over the next week, something unexpected happened. Jane's testimony started falling apart. Forensic analysis of the text messages confirmed they were authentic. Her claims didn't hold up. More importantly, her pattern was too well documented. 3 previous affairs, 3 previous payouts, 3 previous men who came forward to verify they'd been scammed the same way. Jane's credibility was zero. Her testimony for Gregory was worthless, and Gregory's plan collapsed. Criminal charges proceeded. The insurance fraud case was solid. Premier's civil suit moved forward, but more happened. The media coverage shifted to something deeper. Investigative journalists started looking into the pattern of professional men who use subordinates for affairs, the power dynamics, the corruption. Natalie's patient advocacy program was reviewed by new Premier leadership and fully reinstated. Dr. Winters personally apologized and offered Natalie a full executive position, permanent senior VP role. What you did took courage, Dr. Winters said. You could have taken the easy route. Instead, you exposed a pattern that went beyond just you. Letters started arriving. Not hate mail, support. Women who'd been betrayed in similar ways. Women who'd sacrificed careers for ungrateful partners. Women who saw in Natalie's story their own suppressed rage and found permission to demand better. One letter came from a young woman named Emily, 24. I was paying my boyfriend's law school tuition, working 2 jobs, believed in our future. Last week I found out he's been cheating with his study partner. They're planning to get married after graduation, which I'm funding. I was going to stay. Then I read about you. I left him today. Thank you for showing me I deserve better." Natalie cried, reading that letter. Because this was what the war had actually been about. Not destroying Gregory, not winning assets or cases or public opinion. It was about refusing to let betrayal define her, refusing to shrink herself for someone who needed her small. Refusing to accept that 15 years of sacrifice entitled someone to destroy her quietly. It was about becoming the woman who could walk away from revenge when revenge required becoming someone she didn't want to be. That was the real victory, not Gregory in prison, not Jane losing custody, not the money or house or vindication. The victory was choosing integrity over vengeance when vengeance was offered on a silver platter. Choosing to be the kind of person who could live with herself after the war ended. 2 months after refusing Jane's deal, Natalie signed the final divorce papers. Gregory got nothing. Jane got nothing. Natalie got the house, the assets, her career, and something more valuable. She got herself back. Not the version that had sacrificed everything. Not the version that had planned systematic revenge. A new version, stronger, wiser, whole. The woman who'd learned the hardest lesson. True power isn't destroying your enemies. It's refusing to become them in the process. Chapter 9. The Rise from Ashes. 18 months later. Natalie stood in the green room of the congressional hearing room, watching herself on the monitor as they replayed the security footage from Bella Notte one more time, and she felt nothing except calm determination, because this moment wasn't about Gregory anymore. It was about every person who'd ever been systematically destroyed by someone they'd trusted. 18 months had passed since the vow renewal. 18 months of legal battles, media scrutiny, and slow reconstruction of a life demolished from the inside out. But standing here now, waiting to testify before Congress about healthcare fraud and corporate accountability, Natalie barely recognized the broken woman who'd sat in Miguel's office watching her world collapse. The divorce had finalized 8 months ago. Gregory got nothing. The court agreed that his documented planning to defraud Natalie, his journal entries showing premeditation, and his insurance fraud scheme meant he'd forfeited any claim to assets accumulated during their marriage. The judge called it one of the most calculated betrayals I've witnessed in family court. Gregory had served 14 months for insurance fraud, released on probation, working as a bookkeeper for a small firm, earning $38,000 yearly, his CPA license revoked permanently, industry reputation destroyed, LinkedIn deleted, social media abandoned after relentless harassment. Natalie didn't think about him often anymore. When she did, she felt only distance, like remembering a character from a book read years ago. Both versions of Gregory, the broke boy with the $200 ring and the man who'd called her useful, had nothing to do with who Natalie was now. Jane had lost custody of her daughters permanently. David had full custody and had moved his family across the country. Jane tried restarting her pattern with a real estate developer in Florida, but her reputation preceded her. She violated parole attempting another insurance scheme and was serving 30 months. Natalie didn't think about Jane at all. She was a cautionary tale, not worth sustained thought. What Natalie thought about was the future she was building. The patient advocacy program at Premier Healthcare had become the industry model. Under Natalie's leadership as Senior Vice President of Patient Relations, they'd created pharmaceutical partnerships that reduced prescription costs for low-income patients, developed early intervention programs for maternal health, and established pregnancy loss support systems. Her team numbered 60 people. Her budget reached millions. Her initiatives were profiled in medical journals. She earned more than Gregory ever had, entirely hers. But the work that mattered most was the Rebuild Foundation, a non-profit supporting women recovering from financial abuse in marriages, women who'd funded partners' educations, women who'd sacrificed their ambitions, women who'd discovered too late that their contributions were seen as servitude. The foundation provided legal assistance, career counseling, financial literacy training, mental health support. In 18 months, they'd helped over 3,000 women navigate divorces and rebuild independent lives. Natalie had funded the startup with her divorce settlement. Every dollar Gregory hadn't fought for went toward helping women escape men like him. It felt like justice in ways court verdicts never could. She'd written a book, The Woman I Built from Broken Pieces, part memoir, part guide for recognizing and leaving exploitative relationships, bestseller lists, all proceeds to pregnancy loss support groups. The book sparked conversations. How society normalized women shrinking themselves. How supportive wife often meant silent financier. How infertility trauma was weaponized in divorce proceedings, major network interviews, podcasts, TED Talks, each time telling her story not for sympathy but for education, showing women red flags, teaching them to value their contributions, giving permission to demand reciprocity. The message resonated. Women reached out constantly, each one a variation. I saw myself in your story. I left. Thank you. One letter came from Emily, the young woman who'd written 18 months ago about leaving the boyfriend she'd been putting through law school. Emily enclosed a photo of herself in a white coat. I got into medical school. Finishing my first year, I did it alone, building something entirely mine. You showed me I didn't need someone else to validate my worth. Natalie kept that letter framed in her office. Time magazine named her one of their most influential people. The whistleblower who changed healthcare accountability. The profile discussed her advocacy work and how exposing Gregory sparked broader investigations into executive fraud. 3 other executives at different companies were caught in similar schemes after Premier's board tightened oversight. She'd appeared before congressional committees twice now, first on healthcare fraud, today on corporate accountability and domestic financial abuse. The hearing room was packed. Cameras everywhere, senators prepared, gallery filled with advocates, journalists, survivors. She thought about Gregory watching from whatever small apartment he lived in now, working his bookkeeping job, seeing the woman he'd called useful testifying before Congress about patterns of exploitation he'd embodied. She hoped he was watching, not because she wanted him to suffer, that impulse had died months ago, but because she wanted him to see what she'd built from the ruins. The aide knocked. Ms. Wood, they're ready for you. Natalie walked into the hearing room, took her seat, faced the senators and cameras and the future she'd created. She'd prepared remarks. But before questions began, she asked permission for a brief opening statement. 18 months ago, I discovered my husband had been systematically betraying me while planning to frame me as unstable to ease his exit, Natalie began, voice steady. He documented his betrayal in a journal, called me useful, said I was in the way. She paused, looking at the faces watching. Senators, journalists, survivors who understood. I'm not here today to talk about my ex-husband. He's irrelevant to my life now. I'm here to talk about the patterns of financial abuse that allowed his behavior to flourish. The corporate structures that enable executives to exploit subordinates and spouses simultaneously, the legal frameworks that make it easier to hide fraud than expose it. Natalie pulled out documents, evidence compiled over months, patterns identified working with the Rebuild Foundation. In the past 18 months, my foundation has worked with over 3,000 women escaping financially abusive marriages. 73% had funded their partner's education or career advancement. 86% had sacrificed their own career opportunities. 92% discovered their financial contributions were used against them in divorce proceedings. The statistics landed heavily. These aren't isolated incidents. This is a systemic pattern where one partner's sacrifice is exploited as leverage. Natalie's voice grew stronger. We need corporate accountability for executives who use company resources to fund affairs and fraud. We need legal reforms that recognize financial abuse as domestic violence. We need societal change that stops romanticizing self-sacrifice and starts demanding reciprocity. She looked directly at the lead senator. Gregory Peck destroyed my marriage, violated my trust, mocked my medical trauma, but he couldn't destroy me. That's the lesson I want every woman watching to understand. Your worth isn't defined by who stays or leaves. It's defined by who you become when you refuse to let betrayal make you small. The hearing proceeded for 3 hours. Natalie answered every question with precision, provided evidence, recommended policy changes, spoke truth to power. When it ended, she walked out knowing she'd done something that mattered. Not revenge, not vindication. Change. Real, systemic change that would help people she'd never meet escape situations she'd barely survived. A reporter stopped her in the hallway. "Ms. Wood, do you have any message for your ex-husband?" Natalie thought about it. About Gregory working his small job in his small life. About the empire she'd built. "I hope he finds peace," she said simply. "And I hope he understands that peace comes from being the kind of person who doesn't need to destroy others to feel powerful." She walked away from the cameras, from the questions, from the past that had tried to define her. Walked toward the future she'd built with her own hands. Chapter 10. The Woman Who Chose Herself. 2 years after that forgotten purse changed everything, Natalie received a letter that would test whether she'd truly moved beyond the woman Gregory had tried to destroy. The envelope was simple. No return address. Postmark from a small town 3 states away. Inside, Gregory's handwriting, still familiar despite everything. Natalie almost threw it away without reading. Almost. But curiosity made her open it. "Natalie, I don't expect you to read this. I don't deserve your time. But I've spent 2 years in therapy trying to understand what I became, and my therapist suggested I write this even if you never respond. I destroyed the only real thing I ever had. You loved me when I was sleeping in a car, believed in me when I had nothing, gave me everything, your money, your career, your body, your faith. And I repaid you with cruelty so complete I barely recognize the man who wrote those journal entries. I watch your interviews, read about your foundation, see you testifying before Congress. You became everything you were always meant to be. I didn't make you. That's the lie I told myself. You were always that powerful. I just kept you small because it made me feel big. Jane played me as thoroughly as I played you. We were both predators who found each other, neither victims, both architects of our own destruction. I lost everything, career, reputation, freedom, dignity. But the worst loss was knowing I threw away the only person who ever truly valued me. I'm remarried now. Woman named Linda. She reminds me of who you used to be. Kind, patient, believing in broken people. I don't deserve her either. But I'm trying to be the man you once believed I could be. The man I was before ambition poisoned everything. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve peace. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. Understand what I destroyed. Understand that your revenge wasn't exposing me publicly. It was becoming so phenomenally successful that my absence from your life proves you never needed me. That's the lesson that haunts me. Not the prison time, not the poverty, not the shame. The knowledge that you're better off without me, that I was the weight holding you down. I hope you're happy, Natalie. Genuinely happy. Not because it gives me peace. I don't deserve peace, but because you deserve everything good this world can offer. I'm sorry. For all of it. For being too broken to appreciate what I had until it was gone. Gregory. Natalie read the letter 3 times. Felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no grief, just emptiness where Gregory used to live in her thoughts. She carried the letter to her balcony, the home she'd bought after the divorce. Beautiful penthouse overlooking the city, every piece of furniture chosen by her, every wall her favorite colors, every corner filled with her life. She thought about responding, thought about telling Gregory his apology was inadequate, that understanding what he'd destroyed didn't repair the damage, that remarrying someone who reminded him of her was proof he still didn't understand she was irreplaceable. But what would be the point? Gregory was a chapter in her story, painful, educational, finished. Natalie's phone rang. Emily, the young woman who'd left her exploitative boyfriend 2 years ago, now finishing medical school, calling to share that she'd matched with her top residency choice. I got Johns Hopkins. Emily's joy poured through. Surgery residency, everything I wanted, and I did it completely on my own. "I'm so proud of you," Natalie said. "I wanted to thank you again," Emily said, "for showing me I didn't need someone else to build my dreams, that I was enough on my own." After the call ended, Natalie looked at Gregory's letter again, then walked to her kitchen, turned on the stove, held the letter over the flame until it caught fire, dropped it in the sink and watched it burn. She didn't need Gregory's apology, didn't need his acknowledgement, didn't need anything from him except his permanent absence. The doorbell rang. Carmen with groceries for their weekly sister dinner, their tradition, every Tuesday, cooking together, laughing, planning the foundation's next initiatives, building the life Natalie had chosen. "You look peaceful," Carmen said, setting bags on the counter. "What happened?" "Gregory wrote to me," Natalie said, watching the last of the letter turn to ash. "Apologized. Tried to explain himself." "What did you say back?" "Nothing," Natalie said. "There's nothing left to say. He doesn't get to be part of my story anymore. Not even as the villain." They cooked dinner together. Pasta, wine, easy conversation about work and future plans and everything that mattered in the present. Later that evening, Natalie sat at her desk working on the Foundation's annual report. Over 5,000 women helped in the past year, countless lives rebuilt. Her email pinged, message from a woman named Rebecca. "Dear Ms. Wood, I'm 58. I spent 30 years funding my husband's medical career, raising our children, sacrificing my dreams. Last month I discovered he's been having an affair with a colleague. He wants a divorce so he can start fresh. I was going to stay. Then I read your book. Tomorrow I'm meeting with an attorney. I'm taking back my life. Thank you. Rebecca." Natalie typed her response. "Rebecca, it's never too late to choose yourself. You built his career. Now build your own empire. You deserve everything you gave him and more. Welcome to the beginning of your real life." She sent the email, closed her laptop, walked to the window overlooking the city lights. 2 years ago, she'd stood in Miguel's office watching security footage that destroyed her world, watched her husband celebrate betraying her, watched his joy at another woman's pregnancy while mocking Natalie's infertility. In that moment, she'd thought her life was over. Instead, it had been the beginning of the life she was always meant to live. A life where she was the main character, not the supporting role. A life built on her achievements, not her sacrifices. A life where her worth came from within. Natalie looked at her reflection in the window. Strong, successful, whole. The woman looking back wasn't the woman who'd married Gregory with desperate hope. Wasn't the woman who'd planned his destruction with cold rage. Wasn't even the woman who'd testified before Congress. She was all of those women and none of them. She was evolution, transformation, proof that betrayal doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of your greatest chapter. People asked if she'd ever love again, ever trust a man again, ever open her heart. Natalie didn't know. Maybe someday, maybe never. But she'd learned the most important lesson. She didn't need anyone to complete her. She was complete on her own. The greatest love story wasn't finding someone who valued you. It was becoming someone who valued yourself so completely that no one could take that away. Gregory had taught her that lesson by destroying their marriage, had forced her to discover that the foundation of her worth wasn't in being loved, it was in loving herself enough to walk away from anyone who diminished her. That was the greatest revenge. Not that he lost her, but that losing him made her find the most important person she'd ever meet, herself. Natalie closed the curtains, made tea, sat in her perfect home in her perfect peace. Tomorrow she'd wake up and continue building her empire, helping more women, growing the foundation, speaking truth. But tonight, she'd simply exist in the quiet certainty that she'd won the only battle that mattered. Not against Gregory, against the voice that had once whispered she needed someone else to be worthy. She'd silenced that voice forever. And in the silence, she'd finally heard her own strength. The end.